We are recording. Hello, everyone. Really nice to see Mary Bevan from, where are you, Mary?
I'm in Hornsey in North London.
And Joe Middleton. Where are you, Joe?
I'm in Hertfordshire.
And I am in sunny Solihull. Today, I was supposed to be at Oxford Leader doing some master coursework around French song. So we're going to change this up and talk about French song instead. About 3 or 4 years ago, the two of you recorded an album of French song. What do you love about French song, Mary?
I actually think that French song's my favourite type of song to sing, which is maybe a dangerous thing to say, but I love French song. I guess for me, the language is so romantic, and obviously lots of the poetry is extremely romantic. So I really feel like the language itself lends itself very well to the music. Brilliant. And they really fit together.
Brilliant. And Joe, the disc that you and Mary did a few years back, this lovely one, a lot of the programming was down to you, I think, initially.
I think so. I'm trying to think back now how it all actually began. I can now. So BBC Radio 3 asked me to do a 4-part Du Parc series, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody fell ill, and Mary, as we all know, can sight read anything and loves jumping in and throwing herself into things like this. So she came up to Aberdeen, I think it was, and sight read loads of French songs live on Radio 3. And it seemed to go really well, and we'd been kind of plotting and trying to think of what we might do for her first disc. And these songs, they really kind of struck a chord with us both.
So there's something in some of these songs. You mentioned the Du Parc, amazing, fabulous French composer. Mary, I know we worked a little bit on La Vie Antérieure, especially. So the really famous one is L'Invitation Voyage, but then the next one that you did with the same poet was La Vie Antérieure. I always make it as a big confession. It's my favorite of all the French melody. I just adore it. I don't know if it's the same for you, or if there's something about that Vie Antérieure that you fall in love with as well.
I love that song too. I'm sort of with you there, although I really also love the other song, the Fauré song, Chant d'Automne. For some reason that gets me, and really, I just love hearing it. But La Vie Antérieure, it's amazing. It's sort of in 3 sections. It's a proper epic song, and the words are epic as well. And it's just, I don't know, it really catches your imagination, the text itself. But then the music is so dramatic and big, and as opposed to the other Du Parc songs on the disc, or even that we all know, it feels, there's something operatic about it, or I don't know, it just really stands by itself as this, like the pillars that he talks about in the poem, les grands piliers. I always feel like that phrase sums up the song itself. It is like a pillar of melody.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Joe, for you, working on whether it's that Du Parc song or some of the other French repertoire, I know you work with other singers besides Mary on French rep, but yeah, imagine that. But there's something people often talk about, especially people like me who aren't professional pianists in any way, talk about the kind of the colours and the flow with French melody. How do you talk about it? How do you think about that kind of repertoire?
Well, I kind of first fell in love with French music when I was a student at university, and I had a new piano teacher when I was about 19. And up until then, I hadn't really played or heard much French music, and she got me started on some of the really big Ravel solo piano works, and I just instantly loved them. I loved this clarity and the transparency and the classical element of them, which is then combined with this exotic color, this heat that you have as well. And as soon as I began playing those, I just became completely obsessed with this new sound world. And it, for me, was just completely different to anything else I'd ever come across. So I guess I came to it quite late. But then, yeah, just totally fell in love with it. And when I was at university, I met my wife, Tabi, and she actually speaks French. And so we spent a lot of time going to Paris and all over France. And yeah, I just became completely hooked on the whole language of it, the sound world, everything.
It's a hard life having to go to Paris when you do French stuff.
Very hard. If only we could now.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the songs you recorded on that disc are sort of renowned to be some of the hardest repertoire for the melody. So I'm talking about the Debussy Baudelaire songs, the 5 Poèmes de Baudelaire. And, you know, if the Duparc song of La Vie Antérieure is kind of epic and operatic, it's still just a song. And then you get to the 5 Poèmes de Baudelaire, and, you know, there are 5 of them, and it opens with a song which is, in most recordings, about 8 minutes long anyway. It's like, oh, here we go. So I don't know, Joe, what does that feel like to you as you kind of psych yourself up, whether for a recording or a performance? I don't know how much you've done them live.
I've done them a bit live. I absolutely love them. I think they are the most extraordinary works. That being said, I think you always have the feeling when you're performing them that you are having this amazing time on stage. Kind of every bar is full of the most extraordinary harmonic writing. They're very kind of thickly scored and dense, so you have to work quite hard, kind of thinning them out enough so that all the different lines and textures can really be heard. And then you get to the end of it, and it's, you know, 25 minutes of really slogging your guts out, and audiences always look slightly baffled and kind of look at you like, have you brought anything else, like a nice Schubert song or something? So I wonder whether they are kind of almost the perfect song not to hear live, in a way. They're kind of extraordinary if you've got time to sit with the score and study them, read them through, play them through, sing them through, read the poetry, because that just seemed to open a whole other door in his musical outlook. His interest as well with Wagner, that's in every bar. And this kind of great sweep and the gigantic scale of them, there's nothing else like them in French song.
So it sounds like now is a perfect time for everyone to spend you know, weekends and days and evenings reading the scores. They're freely available online, and tuning into recordings which are not free, you can buy them, and just really getting to know those songs. But Mary, I know when we worked on the Debussy songs, first of all, I remember working with you quite a while ago now on Just la mort des amants, which is the final song of the set. And then later, a few years later, when you were working with Joe, you did the full set. But what does it feel like to you? What do you do when you're working on songs like that? They're mega, they're intense, there's loads going on. What work do you actually put in?
Well, actually, when we did, good question.
What do you put in?
Tell us, come on, how much have you actually practiced? Well, actually, Helen, when we did them first, I think I did all of them. It was for the Oxford Lieder Festival. And God, that was, Albie had just been born, my son, so that was 9 years ago. And when I came back to them to do them with Joe, I was a different singer, so I had to basically relearn them. And I guess when you, with a piece like that, with a set of songs like that, you sort of let it filter in over time. That's what it felt like with me. And because we don't get as much time together, Joe and I, as, you know, if only we lived in the same village, because I think we'd probably play and sing together the whole time. But as it is, when you're doing a concert together, often you're just throwing it on, and like, I think we did the Baudelaire did we do them in Glasgow that time for the BBC thing? Did I basically sight read those? I also learned them when I was at the academy. So I had like a backdrop already of sort of little layers of work that I'd done over the years. And when I came to do them with you, Joe, working on the text with Helen, I came up to Solihull and we sat together and worked through the poems, didn't we? And it was just, actually it was more like immersion rather than sort of learning them. So I'd listened to them, lots of different recordings, not too much obviously, because you don't want to take on other people's interpretation as your own. And then just sort of singing them and trying to go with the flow. I mean, I don't think I'm one of those singers really who, I don't even know what other people do actually. I just do what I do, which is try and get to the point where I love the song and translate it all, of course, and just think about poems. And like sometimes I do little charts where I write what I feel at this point and what words are springing to my head, and maybe think of a picture for each song. But it's quite hard with those songs because there isn't really a story as such. They're more like feelings and emotions and senses that you're trying to describe. But luckily the music sort of does that for you, so you have to let yourself sort of be swept along by it.
Yeah. When I've worked on those poems, not as the songs at all, but worked on those poems with students, I might give them, say, Harmonie du soir, and obviously it's just about evening harmony, simple as that. But it's amazing how many layers you can unpeel from that poem, whether you're just looking at all the repeated sounds, whether you're looking at all of the potential meanings that, you know, there's some religious meaning in there, but Baudelaire isn't really a particularly religious poet. So should we go with that? Should we not? And one of the things I enjoyed with both of you is when we were recording that, I say you were recording it, I was sat in the background, page turning sometimes. We were there in a church, and I don't often associate those kind of songs. They're romantic, they're sensual, there's a lot of eroticism, and there we are in a blooming church recording these things, and somehow you get a different set of connections as well. So what does that feel like, doing them in different venues? Does that make any difference to you, say, Joe?
Oh, I've never really thought about that. I think more about the power of imagination, and that you have an intention when you start a song, and in a way it doesn't really matter where it is. I know sometimes you're in a space which feels particularly atmospheric, or has a particularly fine acoustic, or has a particularly fine piano. But most of the time when I'm at home and I've kind of got past the nuts and bolts, practicing getting the right notes type of feeling, most of my time spent thinking about what the kind of emotional heart of the song is, what the kind of sound world I want to create. Because most songs tend to start with a piano introduction, so it's generally down to you to kind of throw this sound world, this soundscape towards a singer, that then they feel immersed in this particular world, that then helps them to sing and put across the words well. So I think I think it doesn't really matter where it is, because you've done the work beforehand, so you have a feeling, you have this kind of ownership over what you felt the composer was drawn to in this text, what they were trying to put across. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the French composers of that repertoire, whether it's Fauré, Debussy, Duparc, would be absolutely delighted to hear people think like that it is about the sentiment, it is about the emotion, in kind of all of those multifaceted ways. Mary, when you work on French repertoire, is there anything you're particularly kind of worried or terrified about? You think, oh, it's French rep, or is it always for you just this like, yay, I get to sing in French again?
It's almost always yay, but I guess when I started exploring Ravel recently, that was with Joe, we did a Wigmore about a year ago, these crazy Ravel songs, and that's like Debussy plus, isn't it? It's like Debussy has its challenges of harmonically, it's not, you have to sort of find your way. Ravel's even more like that, and and it's quite dense. I guess the music is quite dense. It's not as sort of lovely and melodic as Foray or Du Parc even. So I guess what I worry about is, how can I get an audience to understand this music straight away, and make sense of it for them, sort of make a pathway through it. It's like you've got to pick out the tunes and then enjoy the bits where there is no tune and it's just the piano and you. And I suppose it just takes more rehearsal. I think you need to have a really good relationship with the pianist. I wish I had that. And that you need to really be on the same page as each other, so that, because you're really going to be interweaving a lot with the piano, and you can't just see it as a bit of song which you're accompanied by. So I don't ever feel like, oh God, no, I've got to do French. I actually feel like I can't wait to see what this song has got to offer. And I guess linguistically there are some challenges that, as I'm not a French speaker, that I used to find quite hard, and I'd often contact Helen and say, do I elide this word, or do I sound, what about my rolled R's, and there's this question of rolled R or a guttural or whatever. But these days there's so many good recordings out there. You can sort of get help in that sense from other singers who've gone before, and just, I guess it just takes a little bit more time and work to get the voice really sort of telling the story musically.
I think we're all agreeing that the French melody, or whatever you describe it as, has these kind of layers, these kind of things that you keep peeling back, that people who work on it like me, who research it, people who work on it like you guys who perform it, but also the audiences who tune into it and listen to it. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of demands made of us. And yet there's just some absolute gorgeous, some absolute, hits and belters in that repertoire. Joe, do you have a total favourite or a few favourites in the French repertoire?
I don't think so. No, that sounds a real cop out. But I think the thing I love about French song is that there are all these different strands. So you've got this kind of very classical Mozartian strand with people like Fauré and early Debussy, and then you've got this kind of Wagner-infused romanticism with people like Chausson and Du Parc, and then you've got this kind of heady Basque Spanishy vibe with people like Ravel. So I feel like whatever kind of taste and mood you have on that day, there's always something that's going to inspire you. Yeah, I don't think I could even pick.
Yeah, it's a mean question.
10.
And Mary, if you were to recommend a song to a singer starting out, is there a song in the French rep you think that's one to really, really start off with?
As a singer or as a listener to sing?
For singer, yeah.
Oh God, there's so many. One of the first songs I ever sang was must have been 18-year-old, was Notre Amour, Fauré. Yeah. It's such a pretty song. It's not too hard to sing. It's all about the text. There are 5 little verses, and each is different in tone. And it's got a nice big high note at the end, which we all love. And there's a little lower version in case you don't want to go up to the top A. I guess for me that song was good as a young singer because it teaches you that all the text has got to be at the front, physically at the front of your mouth so that it can be heard, but also in terms of its importance. The tune is very simple, but it has that beautiful sort of flowing thing that French song does, where you have to sing. It really encourages you to sing with line, but also to get the words and the text really forward. And I think that's a really good starting point. I mean, it's not really easy, but I think that young singers can sing it, and then you can take it through as you improve. with age or experience or whatever. And, you know, when you sing it 20 years later, it'll be a different song, but I think it's quite good for young voices, that one.
Brilliant. We've talked around all kind of bits of French song, different bits of the repertoire. And I really enjoyed hearing your kind of insights into what you like, what you don't like, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. But I wonder, Joe, if you've got any kind of final reflections on thinking about the French melody, what you'd like other people to know about the French melody, what you wish they knew.
I don't know, really. I think what I would love is for there to be more time and space in life, in fact, to study the words with people like you, because I think a lot of this music on the page, it's so evocative and it's so immediately listenable to. These are beautiful, beautiful tunes with great harmonic structure. But it seems to me that they only really come alive when a singer and a pianist understands the shape of the text in the same way that the composer would have done. And that's when I think it's just brilliant having somebody like you, as you were there on our disc, just able to kind of steer us a bit. And so I think it'd be really great to hear from you, Helen, about any texts that would be good to read at a time like this. I've got some that I haven't even opened yet. But are there any kind of classic books we should all have?
So I guess most people know that one, A French Song Companion. That's probably back to front. Yeah, there it is, Joe. It's on Mary's shelf. So that's the one that's that's that is the go-to. But when you want a little bit more than that, it tends to be that you need to go and look for the particular poet, and to be prepared to go and explore by poet rather than by French song, if you see what I mean. So there's a brilliant set of studies around Bonville that came out quite recently. And Bonville, he did things like, his poems were set by composers like Debussy. He did Nuit d'étoiles, for example, one of the most well-known Debussy songs. And Bonville, there hasn't been a lot of work on him for a while, and people are like, oh, it's just this kind of romantic text. But there's a lovely new book, I say newish book out by a chap called David Evans, which is a really great read. There's a whole chapter on song in there. And then a couple of resources that are emerging that are online resources. So there was a book done way back in the 1990s by a woman called Ruth White about all of the Verlaine songs. And that's increasingly being digitized, so the resources out there. So you can find more about the Verlaine songs. And what's interesting about Verlaine, and a bit like Baudelaire, so some people might know my Baudelaire Song Project work, is that their poems have been set by hundreds of different composers. So in Verlaine's case and in Baudelaire's case, we're talking about 700 or 800 different composers or songwriters who've done their work. And I think just trying to connect the repertoire in a different way, rather than I know this Verlaine setting by Fauré and there's a Debussy setting of that poem, there's actually all this other stuff as well. Because what that does is it gives you different versions, different interpretations, just opens up the world a little bit. But I think there is a bit of a gap in the market for understanding a little bit more about the whole of French songs. So given I've got time, I might get on and write that, yeah? Listen, it's been brilliant to talk to both of you. Thanks so much for your time. And let's find some time for French song again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Helen. Bye. Bye, Joe.
Bye.